Hi, it's Corrine. Thanks so much for stopping by. Today I'm making 3 Christmas cards using Paperartsy Joffy stamp set, and I made 3 5x7 cards. I'll be sure to link down the stamp set that I used down in the description box below. I purchased mine from scrapbook.com, and I've not used this Paperartsy before. It's very whimsical, super fun to play with. I pulled out some Gina K amalgam ink, and I'm going to stamp that down on some Bristol Smooth cardstock because I do plan on ink blending as well, and I like to use Bristol Smooth for that. So I am going to give this a good press, try and get a decent impression. I'm not worried about getting a perfect impression because I do plan on stamping this again to get the vibrant black lines. So when I do that, I'm leaving my stamp set in my MISTI, and I'll just place that piece of cardstock right back in the corner to get a perfect lineup when I'm ready to do that. So here I'm showing you that I have a Simon Says Stamp magnetic glass board, and I believe this is 9x12, and on the top of it I keep a 9x12 ultra sticky grip mat. And to keep that covered, the transparency that comes with it, it's very hard to pull on and off. So I keep those 2 8.5x11 sheets. Those are from some sticker paper. It's just the release portion of it. I keep those on top of it to keep the dust off, keep it cleaned. And then whenever I want to do any type of ink blending, it's easy to just pull this glass board out. On my desk in my craft room, I also use a glass board, so I could stick it to that, but then it's harder to, clean up and store again. So by keeping it on this glass board, it's super easy to just kind of pull out, use, clean it, and put it away. So here I was showing you that I did cut out some masks from Eclipse masking paper, and I also numbered my branches or my layers of the tree because they're similar but a little bit different. So I just have them labeled 1, 2, and 3 so I know which order that they go in. And I also cut out a mask for the star as well. I cut out quite a few masks because I wasn't sure where I was going with the card at the time, but I'll keep those in with the stamp packet for future use. I'm using some Distress Oxides. I'm using Stormy Sky Chip Sapphire for the blue, and I'm doing a little bit of a gradient. I want it super light on top, and then at the very, very bottom, as you can see, I'm using some Seedless Preserves with a small blending brush. I'm using my Cricut spatula to just kind of get behind those. You can also use some tweezers and carefully removing that from the grip mat. I don't show it, I don't believe, on camera, but I do take the heat tool to it as well because I wanted to color those in. So here I'm coloring in with 3 different colors of green Copic markers, and then I believe I used 2 colors of yellow. So I'll go ahead and color these and come back with you. So I'm just finishing up my Copic coloring, and that's something I plan to practice more on to get better at. I'm putting this entire piece back into my MISTI, and I did put a piece of transparency film over it, pulled out some Onyx Black VersaFine ink. This is a very vibrant black, but I wanted to make sure I had it lined up correctly. So I stamped it on transparency first. And as mentioned, I made 3 cards. 1 or 2 of the cards were slightly off. I don't know if it was because I took the heat tool to them and it bended them. So I was glad that it bent them rather. So I was glad that I took the transparency to them to make sure that I got a pretty good lineup of that dark ink. And here I'm just showing you I used some different colors. So for the next card, I pulled out some Spun Sugar, Kitsch Flamingo, and Picked Raspberry. I wanted a little bit of a pink background, doing the exact same thing I did on the first card. So all 3 of them I did ink blend them. The only thing different I did on the third card is I went a little bit darker with my pinks. Here I go pretty light. And then using a smaller ink blend, I go dark right at the base of the tree. Adding seedless preserves right to the very bottom because I liked how that seedless preserves looked. For the other 2 trees, I did blues, which I thought turned out really pretty. So here I'll just show you the coloring of one of the branches of the blue tree as well. I do like to go through with my lightest color, then go in with my darkest, then blend it back out with the mid-tone, and then the light tone, the lightest tone. Again, I'm still learning with my Copics. I've owned them for a while, but I don't practice enough, but I do plan to do that just to get more proficient with them. So off screen, I finished coloring them. Again, same thing, use the transparency. I also colored in the presents and the little tags that come with these. So once I knew they were in place, I just went and gave it a good impression with my VersaFine ink. I love that black ink. That's my favorite. It does take a while to dry. So here's some Unicorn Hero Hues Hero Arts ink and some Hero Arts white embossing powder. And I pulled out this stamp set from Tailored Expressions. I'm going to stamp a bunch of sentiments, and they do have a coordinating die that will cut all of them out at once. So I'm going to treat that with my anti-static bag first. This is, as you can see, on just craft cardstock. This is craft cardstock by Recollections from Michaels. And then I'll go ahead and pour on my embossing powder and heat set that, cut those all out, and then that gives me options for all 3 of my cards. Plus it leaves me with some leftovers for future projects. I'm working, because it's better on film, I'm working on a self-healing black mat, which I did not want to get warped by my heat gun, so I pulled out my small glass mat and made sure to heat set it on top of that just to avoid warpage. So for all 3 of the backgrounds, I wanted a little bit of something on there. So I pulled out some background stamps. This is an Echo Park, I believe it's called Magical. I think it goes with their Magical collection. So I'm just going to use some VersaFine ink and give myself, or Versamark rather, give myself just a tone on tone for the background. I could have gone directly onto the card base, but again, I wasn't sure where I was going with these cards. So I'm working on a 5x7 panel here that I will add to a 5x7 card base once I'm done. So I just moved that up in my MISTI, pressing that down. This does not have to be perfect because a lot of it will be covered. I just wanted it mostly on the outside edges. Here's how I'm making my 5x7 card base. I'm using an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, scoring it at 5. I'll give that a good press, and then I'm going to take it over to my cutter and just cut off the excess. It's super easy to do it that way. Using some Beacon Fabri-Tac, I'm going to glue that down. I'll bring back in my scoreboard just to use that corner to press that up in there to get it to lay perfect. And then I like to press that down with my brayer, set that aside to dry. And I will have a piece of cranberry from Concord and 9th, cranberry cardstock for the front, but I wanted that to have a little bit of dimension behind it. So I'm adding 2 pieces of craft behind it. I love for Christmas using craft and red and pink and yellow, actually all the colors, but I like using craft when it comes to Christmas decor. I like making tags with craft backgrounds. And for the background, I did stamp that Versamark a couple times just so it stood out nicely. So I'm using, I'll have to look and link it down in the description box below. I'm not sure who that Alpha stamp set is offhand, but I'll check that and add that to the description box. But I'm using an Alpha die, and I did back that twice with craft cardstock using the same cranberry red cardstock on top. I'll add the word Christmas across. And once I laid it out and was pretty happy with it, I'm using some Post-it tape to tape that down, add my glue, and I made sure to leave a little of it showing. I even ripped the top here so I can gauge where to put it on my card base. You could also just start with the first letter, glue it down, and the last letter, start with the C and the S and just kind of work your way across. That would be easy to line up once you have it in place. So here I decided to add 2 of these little border strips. I'm going to put a couple of them together just to give them a little bit of dimension. And also I used a little bit longer one so it has like a double banner shape on either end. Hopefully you can see that here. It says, "Wishing you a joyous holiday." I had my brother scan and cut that main piece out, and I did also cut a few of them. I wasn't sure if I was going to put dimension behind it, but come the time I liked it better just straight down on that cranberry cardstock, being that had a little dimension behind it. So I'll just glue down my present that comes with it. I'll add the little tags using some American Crafts red and white baker's twine. Just tie that in a bow, and then I'll glue down the tags, and then I'll glue the bow to the top of it and give that a chance to dry. I'm using a fine tip bottle. My reverse tweezers really help to kind of keep my hands out of the way, and I have some Barely Art glue. That's my favorite wet glue to use. That and the fabric Beacon tack. Or Fabri-Tac by Beacon rather. So using a white gel pen, I'm just adding a little bit of what would be snow on the branches. And I like to finish off the inside of my cards, so I'm using the same color cranberry cardstock, the same craft cardstock, and I'm going around with my scoreboard just to give it a little extra character to the inside piece, just embossing that. I'll add that to another piece of the cranberry cardstock and glue that to the inside of my card. I like to normally cut out the inside of the cardstock to save that, but this cardstock had something on it, so I just left it on there. So I stamped with the same cranberry, that little Christmas present, and that finishes this card. For my next card, I'm using a light blue cardstock. I'm using powder by Concord and Ninth, and I pulled out that same white ink, and I'm using some layering stencils, snowflake layering stencils that I have in my stash, and a paper pouncer to pounce on the ink. And I'll go through with my white embossing powder and heat set that. I also have this background paper that I'm using, a Simon Says stamp Merry Christmas background. I had that, it kind of got messed up. I don't know if you can see it at the top. So I didn't use it for the project that I had originally made it for, but I thought it was perfect for this project, being that I'm going to be covering most of it up with that blue cardstock. You don't even notice that it overlaps a little there. So doing the exact same thing, except with the word Merry, I'm stacking 2 pieces of craft cardstock, and then I will add the colored cardstock. In this case, I'm using ballet slippers. Again, I love using pink for Christmas. I love using red. I think it all ties in so well together. So on this one, I'm adding, the next 2 cards actually, I'm adding the word Merry. Just eyeballing those. And then I'll put a paperweight on top to give those a chance to dry. For this one, I'm using 2 of the little presents that I colored in, added the little tag to the front, and then I'm using some white twine for the little bow on those. I liked how on the last card, how I stacked up the edges and it gave it 2 different banner shapes. So I did the same on the next 2 cards. I figured, why change it? And then I'll just put that right over the Merry, add some polka dots for snow. I don't go over the entire card, just the tree branches and the star. So for the inside, I'm pulling out by Concord and Ninth Sweater Season. And this is how I'm going to finish off the inside of my card. I'm just going to stamp. I'm getting that in place with my Sweet Petunia corner piece. That'll help me line it up. And I've never used this stamp before, so I'm conditioning it by wiping off the top, using some Versamark ink. And I do stamp that a couple times. Again, being that I've never used it, just to make sure I have a good impression. Warm wishes this holiday season. I thought that was perfect. And I was able to use up a piece that was not good. So I love doing that. So pulling out for my background stamp, this one I used the Photo Play Grateful, Thankful, Blessed. I love this stamp set. And I'm doing the same thing. I didn't worry about getting a great impression in the middle, being that that mostly was covered up. And this is a 3D embossing Flurry of Snowflakes by Spellbinders. I embossed some of the rose gold foil cardstock from Concord and Ninth, and look how pretty that turned out. Did the same thing, the word Merry. I stacked it a couple times. I love the look of that. And here's a piece of ballet slippers. I did cut out the middle using a frame. Like I mentioned, I do like to do this because it saves on the cardstock. So I cut that out using a frame stack that I had. And then I just cut out a piece of white scrap cardstock that I had, just so it makes it all even when I glue down this embossed piece. So I gave that some time to dry, and I'm doing basically the same thing with the second cards. I'm gluing down my main piece. I did stack the word Merry, and I was super happy with how these cards turned out. So I did 3 of them similar with 2 different color schemes. So for this one, I did want to add that double edge there, or the banner shape, using the same rose gold foil cardstock. And I went ahead and used a shadow die for the inside. It says Merry Christmas, and also another piece of that Tailored Expressions banner die set for the inside of the card to finish it off. This is just some really pretty. I love it. I'm using just the very last of it, some American Crafts Baker's twine as well. Just the natural color. So again, just tying a bow, putting a little bit of glue and letting that set to dry. For this, I decided to also add the polka dots. I liked how those looked. I could have done that to the entire background, but like I said, I left it to the branches. So here are all 3 of the cards. Super simple to put together, and I hope you enjoyed the process of it. If you have not subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you would subscribe, give this video a like, and follow me on all social media under CorenesCreations. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I hope you have a great day.